Now, these are practice books that you'll be able to practice reading on. And we recommend very strongly that you read each book at least 3 times. You don't have to read the whole book. Hey, you don't have to read the whole book, but it's really good to read the part you're going to cover in 20 minutes. And it's really incredibly important to read out loud that part 2 or 3 times. Hearing your voice makes a difference in seeing how those words are pronounced, or how that weird sound effect comes, or where the words are and how they flow. It makes a big difference. And one time we had the graduate students, the Honor Graduate Students organization at the university had volunteered to read, and they're reading at University Park School, and they hadn't read the book before they came over, because they're college guys. And afterwards, several of the boys, the 4th grade boys, came up to the librarian and asked, did they have reading disabilities too? So it really makes a difference to read the books ahead of time. They can tell. But the audience is going to be incredibly forgiving. They don't care if you miss a word or a line or have to repeat something. They just want to get on with the story. 4th grade's a great age for that. You don't have to worry about doing sound effects or changing your voice. It's effective if you can, but it's not it's not bad if you can't or you aren't comfortable doing that. Just doing a straight reading is fine. What's going to impress the boys is there's a man here who likes books and he's reading a fun book to me. That's what's going to come across. And also, if you have fun with the books, which these are fun books, it's like my wife says, very few men progress beyond 4th grade when it comes to humor. And I think that these will appeal in some ways to us too. So if we're having fun as we're reading the books, that's infectious to the audience as well. Now, all these books are going to be available at the Literacy Council at the Forget Me Nots bookstore on Gaffney, across from the Co-op Grocery. And you can check out the books and then bring them back so other guys can read them. Because a lot of people wait to see which books they're going to be assigned on the schedule before they read them. But if you can, these are all fun books. I would recommend reading them all anyway, just for the fun of it. But we do need to turn them over fast, so as quickly as you can get them back to the Literacy Council, the better. But also, again, and if you can't find a copy of the book, get in touch with me, and I'll round one up for you before reading, if you haven't had a chance to read it. So now let's go on with the books we're going to be reading this time. The first one is Jungle Book. Now, this one is a manga. That's the Japanese comic book style that you read from right to left. So you don't begin here where you would normally think this is the ending, you begin here. And right at the beginning, it shows you how to read manga, how you transition. So you're reading, going from character to character, from panel to panel, you're doing it right to left. But within each panel, when you're reading the word balloon, what's there, then you read left to right like we normally do. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. The story, this of course is the Jungle Book by Kipling. It's a bunch of stories, obviously, and it's got on page 216, well actually this is the first page, but on page 216 is the story we're going to read, which is Rikki Tikki Tavi. And it's a much shorter story than many of them, and it's going to, we'll be able to get through most of it. It'll be a challenge to get through the whole thing. But it begins with a poem that's kind of a mood-setting poem that's good to read. And it's where a mongoose has been found at a house. But here it's got the poem. It's good to read this little panel down here. Whenever you see one of those little boxes, caption boxes, it's good to read that and note it to the kids. This says it's Sigauli, India, 19th century, midsummer. Well, you say, oh, this is taking place in India in the 1800s. Here it says military headquarters. It's an English family living in India. And so you don't need to get into the Raj and Indian history or any of that, but just to give enough explanation of where they are, where these creatures are, because all the Jungle Book takes place in India, not in the United States. The kids need to know that too. So anyway, this family finds a mongoose that's near death. They nurse it back to health, become friends with it, and it starts to protect the family. That's his job, from snakes in particular. He feels it instinctively. Ricky's got and yeah, there's other animals there. It'll have, like, this is the coppersmith bird, and here is the Darsey bird. The Darsey is also the tailor bird, it's known as. That's because it weaves together a nest out of string and grass and twigs and things. But it's also a braggart, and it sings a lot. And this Darsey bird goes on and on. Here's bemoaning the fact that one of his fledglings has been eaten by Nog, the cobra. And Nog is a cobra living in this family's garden with his mate and their nest of eggs. So that's who Ricky's going to be battling. Now, I mentioned that Darsey bird because further on, there's Darsey's chant. This is after Ricky has had a bunch of battles with the snakes, and they're not over yet. And this is his paean, his ode to how great Ricky Tikki Tavi is. I would say let's skip this. You know, you can mention that it's there, but it's going to slow down the action so much, and it's because there's more snake action right away. So there's the you don't want to kill the mood. And anyway, when I practiced this, I didn't get all the way through the book, and I was going at a pretty good clip, or all the way through that story. So we'll just be using this one story out of this book. We'll also be using a particular story from this book. This is House of Fear. I don't know if you remember the old Tales from the Crypt comic books. You call those? Yeah. Well, this is very similar, not quite as gruesome, but the stories begin with the old caretaker. The Tales from the Crypt comic books begin with the old undertaker, but it's just the same thing where the old caretaker in a creepy voice sets the story, and then at the end of the story he wraps it up, does a little coda at the end. In this one, it's a group of kids playing football in the snow and roughhousing around, and they accidentally knock over a snowman. And it's a weird, strange little boy's snowman, and this little boy is into magic, it turns out. They find out later. First, Mom shows up with 5 gallons of hot chocolate, which you can't believe that anybody would show up with 5 gallons. It's like a gallon per kid of hot chocolate. But it turns out that kid, the weird kid, has put a curse on the snowmen, and they become killer snowmen. When they try to smack them with shovels, they just reconstitute and keep coming. So how can they possibly battle this snowman? It's with hot chocolate, and that's how they overcome the snowman. And so at the end of the story, the old caretaker is seeing a pond of hot chocolate, poured a pond of hot chocolate to melt down the snowman. Now you'll get through this story without any trouble. So we'll launch on into the second one, which is Dead Lake. The old caretaker sets that story. And Dead Lake's about these 4 boys camped out at a lake, Dead Lake. And one of them tells us a ghost story, of course, about this monster that's supposed to be out there. Another one, the one in a hat in particular, is a wiseacre, and he's sort of the boy who cries wolf. And he makes a point of going off and acting like the monster's gotten him and screaming and scaring everybody. Well, you know bad things are going to happen to him, but we never get there because you won't have time. But that's just to get as far as you can into that one. The next book, the Great Wiz and the Ruckus, is just a straight book. We read from the first through the end of it. Well, as far as you can get. Not going to get to the end. But it features this guy in the center is Red. He's a blind wizard. I think it's a he. We're not actually sure. It's hard to tell who's male and who's female in this. Some of them are human shaped, many of them aren't. But basically, Red is a wizard, and the head wizard is the old timer. And the old timer's called Red and said that the ruckus is coming, and the ruckus is a malevolent, powerful force that invigorates all the evil guys in the land, the marauders, to come attack the peaceful town people. And he says, I can't overcome this ruckus. I'm too old. You must find the 4 other wizards and get them together. And together you can form the Great Wiz and you can overcome the ruckus. And that's what happens. So there's a lot of lessons. It's a good, rousing story as well. The final book as I've said, I did these synopses that I've handed out that will be online as well. But it says in the description of Plants vs. Zombies, it said, it's based on a popular computer game. Don't expect this to make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just pure silly fun. Plants vs. Zombies is an extremely popular video game, and this is an extremely popular graphic novel series. This is about the 6th or 7th book in the series. It's the War and Peas edition. It's the literary edition. But the peas are there because, well, we'll explain. The main characters, the antagonist and protagonist, are Zomboss. He's the boss of all the zombies. He's the one that still has his original brains. And he's just finished reading Toad Psychic Volume 13. And he decides he needs to go to the bookstore because Toad Psychic Volume 14 has just come out. He wants to go get it. And he tries to decide which costume he'll go as, and his disguise. And he decides to go as generic sweater husband. Goes to the bookstore where he overhears people talking about their book club. And he decides he will take over the world, one book club at a time. And he won't eat their brains until he's had a chance to tell them all the things he thinks about the books that they should be reading. Like the Three Little Pigs, where the wolf is the good guy, and if the wolf had only used appropriate military technology, he could have easily overcome those pigs. Oh well, he goes to the book club. Well, at the same bookstore is Crazy Dave. Crazy Dave is an adult who speaks in gibberish and wears a soup pot on his head. And his gibberish is translated by his nephew and his nephew's friend. And they have a host of plant allies who do battle with the zombies. They have the pea shooters that shoot peas. They have the cactus who throw thorns. Anyway, that's how they battle. That's going to be coming soon. But first, Crazy Dave's at the bookstore to get a book autographed he's been looking forward to. The book is Grunt. Don't be a water buffalo, be a water polo buffalo. And he goes to the water buffalo who's written the book and says, Grangle slung sloppo drain. And they translate that as, he wants you to sign it to my pal Crazy Dave. The water buffalo goes, ooh. And so anyway, they overhear the book club too, and he joins the book club as well, Crazy Dave does. So after the Zomboss describes the military tactics that should be used in overcoming the pigs, everybody applauds politely, and they say, well, those were certainly interesting thoughts. And then Crazy Dave does an interpretive dance on the Three Little Pigs. It drives them wild. They love it. So anyway, Zomboss becomes jealous. He calls in his minions so they can outvote all the other people in the book club, and they'll only read the books that he wants to read. And so Crazy Dave and the kids call in their plants to counterbalance the vote, and battle ensues. Like I said, it's just silly fun. Lots of references to books and literature, but only in the most oblique, simplistic way. Because again, we're here to have fun, and that's what we think these books will be. Just a lot of fun, and most of our books are in a series, so that if they light up a kid, there'll be others they can get into. Keep them reading. And that's our books for today. Any questions? Well, thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to reading with you this winter.